Hello, America.
Oh, wait, what am I doing here? Sorry. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the Goldie Show. We're back on our regular schedule. So great to be here. Great to see you all. Excited to be back with my new setup, my new office. So let's get the conversation going. I spoke last night a little bit about Qatar and how dangerous of a state Qatar really is. And a lot of people have heard maybe one or two things here and there, but they're not really familiar with Qatar. And that's because Qatar works behind the scenes. It's a very, very small Gulf country, has a population of maybe 300,000 Qataris total. I mean, the population of the country is much, much bigger, but there's only about 300,000 Qataris. And if you caught my show from yesterday, my live stream from yesterday, I was speaking about, giving sort of a Qatar 101 intro. And we also played a very interesting video by Erin Milan. She interviewed um, the leader of the Qatari opposition, something that I didn't even know existed until yesterday. So make sure that you check that out. Because there's a lot of interest on Qatar, I decided to continue with these sort of exploratory videos to give all of you a better understanding of um, who and what Qatar is and why they are so involved in Western politics, Western society, but more importantly, how Qatar's involvement is actually contributing to the destabilization of Western countries, because a lot of the radical ideology and beliefs and behaviors that we're seeing right now, especially in university campuses among the youth, is because of this indoctrination and this propaganda that's being pushed by Qatar, and of course, scholars and academics and pundits and journalists and lobbyists that are paid by Qatar to push their ideology and to push their propaganda. So I want to start with this video from Mark Levin. This is him on Fox News. It was aired 2 months ago, and sadly, it only has 67,000 views. I think this should be much higher. But again, I think one of the reasons that videos about Qatar don't have a lot of views is because people aren't searching for Qatar, right? If you don't know what the threat is, obviously you're not going to go out and search for it. It's not going to be popular in the media, right? Because it's just not something that's going to be on your radar. But this is something that people have been talking about for a very long time. Those who are familiar with the Middle East, those who are familiar with Middle Eastern politics, and as well as those who are familiar with Islamic terrorism and who is funding and backing Islamic terrorists. So here we go. We're going to watch this video now. I'm very interested to see what Mark Levin has to say. This was on Fox News 2 months ago.
I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin Sunday. Qatar is always in the news. Have you noticed? They're very upset. They're in the United States. They're on this network and other networks complaining about their sovereignty being violated because the Israelis tried to take out the leadership of Hamas, you see. And so they intend to get back at Israel. They hope.
I just want to remind you guys, for those of you who watched my live stream yesterday about Qatar, we did speak about this extensively. And the example that I gave is, back when I think it was like in 2003, I believe, almost 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, when President Bush went after Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was hiding in Pakistan. And President Bush, took him out, even though he was in Pakistan. And no one was outraged by that. In fact, many people were happy, many people were celebrating. And yet, when Israel just recently did the same thing to Hamas terrorists, for some reason, Qatar was able to condemn this as an attack on their sovereignty. And so you really have to take a step back and ask yourself, how is it that when the United States goes after Islamic terrorists, that's not an attack on sovereignty? And yet when Israel does it, somehow it is? Do you see the double standard there? This is one of the greatest achievements of Qatar is being able to convince the rest of the world, at least not the rest of the world, to convince Western countries and Western politicians that harboring Islamic terrorists is somehow critical to international diplomacy. And this kind of goes into their agenda of trying to normalize and legitimize Islamic terrorists, right? And so Qatar has very slowly and is very slowly changing the nuance and the language of international diplomacy, and they're going from no negotiating with terrorists to let's legitimize them, let's give them a diplomatic office, and let's negotiate with them. And so that's where we're seeing the shift in reaction here, because Qatar has been very, very successful in making that shift for Islamic terrorists. I just want to point that out.
Hope to enlist the Trump administration and the UN and everybody else, because you don't attack a sovereign country. Of course, we've attacked a sovereign country called Pakistan, even an ally, because the.
Did I not just say that, guys? Did I? Oh my gosh, I should go buy lottery tickets. I swear I have not seen this video, but this is exactly what I was just talking about. All right, let me go back here. But there, look, I predicted that.
Country. Of course, we've attacked a sovereign country called Pakistan, even an ally, because the Pakistani military was protecting bin Laden. And we sent our special forces in and we killed them. And then we left, violated their sovereignty. It's very funny, this little country, Qatar, worried about sovereignty. They're violating our sovereignty every damn day. Now, I know they've been called an ally by Democrats and Republicans and administrations of both parties. They're no ally. They're no damn ally. And they still have to answer for 9/11. 9/11, 3 days ago, we just acknowledged the 24th anniversary of the slaughter of nearly 3,000 American citizens in New York City, at the Pentagon, in central Pennsylvania, read their names. Politicians turned out. But one of the countries behind 9/11 was Qatar. They've never been held to account, but there's plenty of information about them. Qatar. Let me explain to you, including from our friends at MEMRI, MEMRI.org. They're not the only ones. Go on the internet. It's all over the place. All over the place. Should be emphasized, they write, that while 15 of 19 perpetrators were Saudis acting as individual members of Al-Qaeda, 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, KSM, was, in the period prior to the attacks, an employee of the state of Qatar and enjoyed the safe haven that it granted him. During his time as an employee of the Qatari Ministry of Electricity and Water was a ruse. They were funding him. They were paying him. He engaged in terrorist activities such as attempts to assassinate Pope John Paul II during his visit to Manila and an attempt to down civilian airliners over the Pacific. And he was under the patronage of Qatari Minister of Awqaf, that is Islamic Endowments, Abdallah bin Khalid Al Thani of the Qatari, the ruling family. The rescinded U.S. plea bargain with 9/11 mastermind KSM and his responsibility for the attacks revealed some information. The U.S.'s plea bargain with the alleged 9/11 mastermind would have prevented the full exposure of Qatar's role and responsibilities in the attack. The plea bargain, which was rescinded by the U.S. Secretary of Defense at the time because people objected to any plea bargain for this mass murder, Lloyd Austin, brought to light new and old documents about KSM's role in terrorist attacks against the United States and other countries while working as an employee of the state of Qatar. The documents also reveal that Qatar facilitated KSM's activities and his escape from arrest by the FBI. Really? Oh, yes. When the FBI came to Doha in 1996 to arrest KSM, and this is in his confession, the only ones reportedly to be informed of this in confidentiality was the Qatari emir and the palace. Within hours, that is, of being informed, KSM had disappeared. See page 91 of the 9/11 Commission report and KSM's escape from Qatar. KSM's escape from Qatar was also reviewed by Richard Clark, counterterrorism advisor to President Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush, in his 2004 book, Against All Enemies Inside America's War on Terror, pages 152 to 53. In that book, Clark wrote that a report had stated that KSM learned about the U.S. plan to capture him. Quote, "We were, of course, outraged at Qatari security and assumed the leak came from within the palace." One report, Clark said, contended that KSM had, quote, "fled the country on a passport provided by the Qatari Ministry of Awqaf, that is Islamic Endowments." The government ministry was headed by that same guy, Abdullah bin Khalid Al Thani, a member of the Qatari ruling family. The story was told in much the same way by Richard Miniter's 2011 book, Mastermind, The Many Faces of the 9/11 Architect, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Minister of Awqaf Abdullah bin Khalid Al Thani had agreed to give KSM, I'm quoting, "a no-show job at the Ministry of Electricity and Water and a government-sponsored apartment. Until 1996, this Qatari apartment and salary would be KSM's safe haven and his lifeline as he traveled the world. Doing what? Committing acts of terrorism." Miniter writes, quote, "By October 1995, KSM was seemingly cornered. The CIA and the FBI tracked KSM to an apartment building in Qatar. With a valid extradition order, the FBI agents raced over to his apartment. It was empty. How had he gotten away? Qatar's Minister of Religious Affairs, the same guy I keep mentioning, had tipped off KSM and provided him a traveling companion with false passports, according to Robert Baer, a former CIA official. Baer, who at the time was a CIA case officer working in the region, said that Hamid bin Jassim bin Hamad, a disgruntled member of the Kingdom of Qatar's ruling family, had told him about the arrangement. Barrett also, according to Minotaur, told Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street Journal Southeast Asia bureau chief, remember, he was decapitated by al-Qaeda, that from 1992 to 96, KSM had a no-show job with the government of Qatar, and that government had hampered American efforts to arrest KSM there in 1996. I seem to recall KSM had a role in the decapitation of Pearl. The 2012 book, The Hunt for KSM, Inside the Pursuit and Takedown of the Real 9/11 Mastermind by Terry McDermott and Josh Meyer, provides further details. It says that this minister of Aukoff, the same guy, that is of the ruling family, had arranged for a job for KSM as a project engineer in the Ministry of Electricity and Water. How much he worked at the job is uncertain, but what is clear is that he hadn't quit the fight. He established a small fundraising operation there, recruiting men throughout the Gulf to seek out individual donors who are often found among the older, wealthier men at local mosques. According to McDermott and Meyer, quote, "It is hard to hide in a place like Doha, one of the world's smallest capitals. Security officials there were aware of Mohammed's activities and allowed him to continue. We knew he was sort of in possession of money and sending it somewhere," a U.S. official said. The authors go on to state that according to the 9/11 Commission, most, if not all, of KSM's travels and activities during this time appear to have been related to his interests in carrying out terrorist operations. Some of this was actually funded by the minister Abdullah bin Khalid Al Thani of the Qatari royal family. Wow, what a...
So basically, in a nutshell, he's explaining how Qatar actually helped this terrorist who was involved with 9/11 to escape FBI authority. And Qatar was also funding him and paying for him to go around the world and spread Islamic terrorism. That's all documented in the books and accounts there that he provided. Wow. And this is a country that likes to pretend that it's an ally of the United States. Well, I don't know about you, but allies don't tend to go around and give refuge to people who have murdered your citizens and then give them money and funds to continue traveling and spread their violence and terrorism. And then also, when you want to go and arrest them, your ally isn't necessarily or isn't supposed to at all to leak the information to them so they can escape. But there you go. That's what Qatar did with respect to this terrorist who was wanted for 9/11.
What an ally. New York Times, back on March 8, 2003, James Risen and David Johnston. I read in part, "The United States actually came tantalizingly close to catching Mr. Mohammed." They go on. "An investigation into the long manhunt for Mr. Mohammed, KSM, based on interviews with officials in Washington and the Persian Gulf, reveals evidence that as the Federal Bureau of Investigation closed in on him in early 1996, top government officials in Qatar, now an important American ally in military action against Iraq," this is from 2003, "tipped him off and enabled him to escape. Today, many American officials believe that when KSM eluded their grasp in Qatar, they missed their best opportunity to prevent the September 11 strikes on New York and Washington." Not a single news outlet, to my knowledge, mentioned Qatar last week on the 24th anniversary or KSM's role, the mastermind. Not one. Why is this? Why is this? Now, Qatar and Hamas, gee willikers, why did the Israelis decide they were going to take out the leadership of Hamas in Doha, Qatar? What the hell were they doing in Qatar? Well, to listen to the foreign minister with Brian Kilmeade, we asked Qatar to get the leadership of Hamas so we could negotiate a hostage deal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the leadership of Hamas has been in Qatar and Turkey, but Qatar long before long before October 7th. They're billionaires. They're fat and happy. They're given
Yeah, Qatar is basically an Airbnb for Islamic terrorists.
protection. And the Israelis, after they were attacked again in Jerusalem, a bus filled with citizens, 6 murdered, 21 injured, said enough is enough. Let me ask you a question. If the Qataris had Hamas leaders who ordered an attack on an American bus in Washington with our National Guard there to keep crime down and killed 6 of our people and 21 of our people, would we be saying, oh, well, Qatar's sovereign, so we're not going to go into Qatar and get the leadership of Hamas? Is that insanity? Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you this question. After we were hit on 9/11, did we say, well, don't go after Al-Qaeda, they're in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan, what? Is a nation? It's got its borders. Therefore, we shouldn't attack there. Let's stop playing games. Hamas is operated out of Qatar. The leadership, much of it, is in Qatar. Qatar's been funding Hamas for decades. Qatar's Al Jazeera celebrates October 7th. Al Jazeera is the most widely read piece of garbage in the Muslim and Arab world. It is run by the ruling family in Qatar. Now, I'm not.
Al Jazeera is also banned in several Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Bahrain, and Jordan. And the reason Al Jazeera is banned is because those governments recognize that Al Jazeera is basically a foreign mouthpiece for Islamic terrorism. And it's basically the mouthpiece of the Qatari royal family. And they use it to indoctrinate and radicalize people, not just in the Middle East, but around the world. And that's why several Middle Eastern countries, Muslim Middle Eastern countries, have actually banned Al Jazeera, because Al Jazeera is not news, it's just terrorist propaganda.
I'm not playing any games about this stuff. It's obvious why the Israelis went into Doha to take these guys out. What, they're supposed to say, we can't touch them because they're in Qatar? Let's go on. I want you to watch this short film about Qatar and Hamas.
Somewhere amid the pristine streets and all the skyscrapers, Doha has an open secret. Qatar's capital city, 1,800 kilometers away from Gaza, a comfortable home for the leadership of Hamas. That's the group's political chief, Ismail Haniyeh, personally labeled by the U.S. a specially designated global terrorist. But living in Qatar, he greets allies like the Iranian foreign minister in full view of the cameras. For years, he and other senior Hamas leaders have been holed up in Doha. And now, more than ever, that deal has come into question. Since the October 7th massacre, Qatar has positioned itself as an intermediary, helping to free Israeli hostages. But this story starts much earlier. In 2012, the Hamas leader Haniyeh and Qatar's then ruler stood hand in hand. The group, already designated a terrorist organization by the US and Canada, was welcomed and set up its political office in Doha. But plenty changed when Hamas militants stormed into Israel and took 1,400 lives. At the United Nations, Israel's foreign minister, Eli Cohen, berated the Qataris, demanding diplomats pile pressure on the Gulf autocracy.
Qatar, which financed and harbor of Hamas leaders, could influence and enable the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages.
Qatar purportedly exerts influence over Hamas by helping to fund the civil service in Gaza. This is not new. We found a transcript from 2014 when U.S. Congress called Qatar perhaps the largest financial patron of Hamas. Which leads us back to this.
The way the Qataris pull this off is by whitewashing their role in supporting Islamic extremism, by supporting businesses and investing vast sums of hydrocarbon wealth across places in London and the United States and elsewhere.
Mark Wallace served as a U.S. envoy to the United Nations under George W. Bush. He now leads the nonprofit Counter-Extremism Project. They're demanding a boycott of Qatar's luxury properties abroad, like London's famous Ritz Hotel, sold in 2020 for more than $1 billion to the brother-in-law of Qatar's ruler.
What are the chances they are not going to be financially and personally and as a government liable in part for these terror attacks? The perpetrators of these acts are hiding in plain sight, not even hiding, hosted in plain sight in luxury.
Hamas isn't leaving yet, with senior leaders comfortable a world away from Gaza, under global scrutiny more than before.
That's the Canadian Broadcasting Company. But let me go on in the limited time I have. What else is this great country of Qatar, which has about 350,000 people? Most of the people who actually do the work there are people who brought in from Qatar, many of whom are indentured servants. They get in and they can't get out. Let's take a look. And these things are all over the place for anybody to see, any diplomat to see. Here we have the Jerusalem Post unveiling Qatar's substantial financial influence in American universities, promoting extremism and leveraging its wealth, promoting calls for tighter regulations and oversight.
We're going to get into this, guys, but there's a reason that Qatar is investing. I think it's they've invested $6 billion in American universities. There's a reason for that, and you're about to see why. And I'm going to find some more videos that talks a little bit more about how Qatar is investing in universities in order to indoctrinate the youth and slowly destabilize Western societies like the United States, Canada, Europe, and elsewhere. And to everyone in the chat, yeah, thanks. It's great to be back. I had some upgrades to do, and as you can tell, I have a new office. I have some better equipment, a new background. So yeah, we are ready to go, and it's great to see all of you again. I missed you guys.
An unprecedented wave of anti-Semitism.
Let me go back a little bit here, because this is a part that's really important, guys. So for many of you who are wondering, why should I care about Qatar? Qatar is a small country that's 3,000 miles away on the other side of the world. Qatar has nothing to do with me. I just don't care about the Middle East. Whether or not you care about the Middle East, whether or not you think Islamic terrorism is impacting you, it is. It is. And so you can either learn about it and see the signs and understand how to fight back, or you can just keep your head in the sand. And then, in 50, 60, 70 years, your country is basically destroyed and it's turned into an Islamic caliphate, like what happened to Iran in 1979. Guys, the Islamic Revolution in Iran, it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen, it didn't start in 1979. It's something that actually began in 1941. And they initially tried in 1941. They failed. And so they began, they kind of continued down this plan. And it pretty much took, from 41 to 79. So took about 40 years. It took 40 years to turn Iran into an Islamic caliphate. And of course, look at what's happened in Lebanon. Lebanon 50 years ago used to be a majority Christian country. Now it is overrun by Islamic terrorists. So these things don't happen overnight, guys, which is why this part right now, where he's about to talk about American universities, this is critical, because a lot of these movements, they happen at the university level, and it's a mix of communism and Islamism. And I actually have another video that I'm going to play after this one, which is going to talk a little bit more about how all these foreign countries are influencing American universities. So just pay attention to this part, and this is why you should be concerned about the Qatari influence in universities and in politics, and of course in your societies in general.
Here we have the Jerusalem Post unveiling Qatar's substantial financial influence in American universities, promoting extremism and leveraging its wealth, promoting calls for tighter regulations and oversight. An unprecedented wave of anti-Semitism has been rising in the United States. You may have noticed. including violent protests, tent encampments, harassment of Jews and Israeli students, and aggressive anti-Israel, anti-Jewish messages. Those who monitored Qatar's covert activity in the U.S. and its massive financial influx saw it as a natural continuation of promoting extremist agendas under the guise of supporting science and students. Wait, Qatar is spending money to destroy our colleges and universities? The river to the sea crowd? You better believe it. Billions. They have poured more billions into our colleges and universities than communist China, than any country on the face of the earth. Qatar had ideological goals primarily to promote the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, explained Dr. Charles Asher Small, CEO of the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism, and organization vice chairman David Harris in a New York Post report. According to Small and Harris, Qatar leveraged its immense resources wisely to enhance its image, such as hosting the FIFA World Cup, acquiring iconic sports teams in the West, establishing a global airline, broadcasting Al Jazeera, and integrating into higher education. It hired an army of lobbyists, lawyers, top-notch public relations experts in Washington and other capitals to promote the Qatari brand, penetrate decision-making circles, and intimidate anyone who might question its hidden motives. It goes on. In recent months, the Institute for the Study of Anti-Semitism published a series of studies and findings regarding Qatari funding in U.S. universities. They highlighted its use to influence the agenda through hundreds of joint research projects, extensive personal data collection on students, significant universities operating campuses in Doha, and more. The main research published in November 2023 revealed Qatar as the primary funder beyond the sea of American universities. Asher Small Harris called on the U.S. to rein in Qatar and so forth and so on. And they're not the only ones. Here we have the Counter Extremism Project. What did they find? Qatar's support for extremists undermines regional and international security, provides direct financial and logistical support, their conclusions, to internationally designated terrorist groups, harbors sanctioned, designated, or wanted individuals, including former Hamas leaders. It goes on. What else? Invests in global financial institutions directly linked to entities that finance and support the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. Qatari government has lent support to Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Nusra Front, and the Taliban, including through direct money loans, ransom payments, and supplies transfers. And they have a zillion footnotes to prove their point. Oh, one more. I could do a whole year on this. Over at the Free Press, April 28, 2025, foreign donors have given as much as to U.S. universities in the last 4 years, they mean the Biden years, as they did in the previous 40, according to a new report for the Network Contagion Research Institute that was shared with the Free Press. The study shows an explosion in overseas funding for American schools between 2021 and 2024, nearly $29 billion in foreign money donated during that period. Qatar and China are among the largest sources of funding. That $29 billion figure is more than double the total for the preceding 4 years. And they say it's an understatement because a lot of these countries are not even reporting how much they're giving to our universities. Qatar is the largest source of foreign donations to U.S. universities since reporting began in 1986, with $6.3 billion coming from the gas-rich Gulf state. Qatar.
Why would Qatar want to invest $6.3 billion in American universities? They're not doing it, because they love America, guys. They're doing it because this is how they infiltrate and they take control of the narrative, because money talks. $6.3 billion is not an insignificant amount for a tiny country to invest in American education that influences young American minds.
Qatari donations have ramped up significantly over the last 4 years. Nearly a third of donations from Qatar, over $2 billion, were given between 2021 and 2024. So let me finish this opening statement.
Wow. Okay, so let's go back here. So since 1986, Qatar has invested $6 billion. Two-thirds of that over $2 billion has been invested since 2021 and 2024. If that does not set off red flags for you, not quite sure what to say there. And it seems like things definitely ramped up just before, a couple years before October 7. And since then, it seems like they've been continuing to pump money into US institutions. Guys, this is like a red flag moment right here.
Years, nearly a third of donations from Qatar, over $2 billion, were given between 2021 and 2024. So let me finish this opening statement with the following. Qatar, release the Hamas leaders to the United States for prosecution for war crimes. Release them now. Otherwise, your sovereignty means crap. Number two, we need to limit its ability to purchase businesses and politicians in our country and to pour its poison money into our universities and colleges to undermine our country and our ally, Israel, and spread anti-Semitism. Number three, it must stop funding Hamas. Number four, it must come clean on 9/11. Confess.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here.
There we go. So there was a video from Mark Levin that was on Fox News 2 months ago. Only has 67,000 views there, but there's something more insidious about the funding that U.S. universities get, and Mark, he sort of alluded to it, right? Where was it? It was around here. Where was it? He said, so foreign donors have given as much to U.S. universities in the last 4 years as they did in the previous 40. So it seems like there's a lot of interest from foreign countries into pushing their ideology and promoting their ideology through universities. It seems as if they have found a loophole. And this loophole is being taken advantage of to push their ideologies, whether it's communism, whether it's socialism, whether it's Marxism, whether it's Islamism. All of these bad actors are pushing their anti-imperial, anti-West, anti-Christian ideologies in order to destabilize Western society, and the target number one is the United States, because the United States is the leader of the free world, right? And so these bad actors are funding universities because they know that if they can indoctrinate the youth, these people are going to grow up hating America, and eventually they're going to be the ones who are in charge at some point, because they're going to grow up. It's why you're seeing people in the United States who are American, and yet they hate America. They burn the American flag. They call America like a settler colonial state, or white supremacist, whatever nonsense, right? It's all couched in that progressive leftist Marxist ideology, which is also combined with Islamism as well. And that's why you're seeing, when it comes to young people in universities, a lot of the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine people are supported by the communists, by the Marxists. This army of the red and black, right? They're united in their ideology of anti-imperialism, anti-Westernism. This is the exact same unholy alliance that ruined Iran in 1979. It was the unity of the communists and the Islamists that together, destabilized and unfortunately ended up overthrowing the Shah and turned Iran into a 7th century Islamic hellhole governed by Sharia law. And so if you're wondering why the socialist Marxists always unite with the radical Islamists, it's because the one thing they have in common is their anti-imperialist, anti-Western rhetoric. Although I shouldn't really say anti-imperialist, because the Islamists are actually imperialists, and that's something that no one ever talks about. One of the biggest scams is all these Islamic radicals have convinced the West that they're not the biggest colonizers in the Middle East, right? But when you look at the Arab Muslim, colonization, they're literally the biggest colonizers in the world. But that's how they've been united. But speaking on that, I found this very interesting video about American universities, and this is from 2020. So it's about 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now, and so Qatar, up until this point, Qatar would have only maybe spent about $4 billion. But I haven't watched this, but it popped up on my suggested feeds, and I was looking at the description, and it says, I think this is something that we should watch because this is related to what Qatar is doing. But we have to recognize that it's not only Qatar, it's other bad actors that are influencing young minds in Western universities. So brief description says, elite US universities are receiving billions in funding from foreign governments, including China and Saudi Arabia. Many are raising concerns that this money is buying silence and compliance from America's future leaders. So let's give this a watch and see what's going on. And again, guys, this is an older video, right? So people have been trying to sound the alarm. People have been trying to warn everyone about this threat, and yet it's not getting a lot of traction. It's not getting, no one's really paying attention. So let's watch this and see what they have to say.
When you want to get to the heart of something, follow the money.
America's Ivy League schools under the microscope.
Elite universities are selling themselves, and look who's buying.
These are governments that are hostile to the United States.
Both Harvard and Yale are among the colleges under investigation for failing to report hundreds of millions of dollars in foreign gifts.
Saudi Arabia gave $20 million to Georgetown and to Harvard.
I know her. That's Raheel Raza. Okay. Oh, I love her. Raheel Raza is fantastic. I should have her on my show sometime soon. She's fantastic.
This money should be utilized to lessen the burden of tuition on students, but it's rarely used for that.
When this amount of money is coming in from a foreign government, my first question is why? Why?
It's one of the hidden secrets about foreign influence in America. Just about the entire Ivy League taking money from a foreign government.
And it's gotten to the point now where the funding has ballooned.
What organizations like the Clarion Project have been able to cover is that there have been over $12 billion since 2012 worth of funds from foreign governments that are flowing into the country.
The countries that are donating the most money to American schools are countries with terrible human rights records.
Oh, there's Qatar.
Since 2012, Qatar donated $2.9 billion, China $1.2 billion.
Whoa, look at that. So Qatar has donated. Now this is only up to 2020, right? So these are just 2020 numbers. Obviously the number is much higher than that now. Qatar is at, 6 billion, over 6 billion. But look at this. Like Qatar is at 2.9 billion. China is 1.2 billion. Afghanistan is 9 million. Iraq 44 million. Pakistan 5.6. Palestine, 43 million. Wow. Isn't that interesting, guys? Isn't that interesting? So, Palestine, the fake country, right, which doesn't actually exist, they complain about how they're poor. They complain about how they can't like feed their children, whatever, jihadi nonsense they put out there. They complain how poor they are. And yet here they are. They've given like, what is this? I can't tell if it's 43 or $4.3 million to American universities. Where did that money come from? Like these guys are complaining about how poor they are, and how they have no money, and yet here they are, like giving money to U.S. universities. Like literally, it's everything about Palestine is fake. Okay, Russia 137 million, Saudi Arabia 1.1 billion, Syria. Wow. Okay, so Syria gave 1.3 million. That in 2020, Syria was under the Bashar al-Assad regime, which was a terrorist dictatorship. Wow, these countries that are investing in American education are not necessarily the friendliest. I mean, the UAE, I really have no problem with. The UAE is fighting the Muslim Brotherhood, and they're fighting Islamic terrorism. But the rest, I mean, those are not necessarily countries that are friendly to the United States. Wow.
Saudi Arabia, 1.1 billion. United Arab Emirates, 469 million. And Russia, 137 million. And that's just the amount that's been publicly declared. Most of the money is not declared by the schools.
I want to focus on Yale in particular because it's supposed.
Did you guys also notice how Israel was not on that list? That's very interesting. Everything that the jihadis and Islamists accuse Israel of doing, it's literally them. They're the ones who are doing it themselves, right? Like they complain about, Israel influence or whatever, and yet the Islamists and the jihadis and the communists are actually the ones who are doing this, because I did not see Israel on that list.
Supposedly filed no reports at all for any of the gifts that it did get. Academic institutions just are fundamentally and inherently dishonest when it comes to the money.
The government's investigating some of the nation's most prestigious colleges.
The Department of Education conducted investigations of several prominent American universities.
They sent a letter to the Senate subcommittee, which actually shone a light on what's actually happening.
One university had multiple contracts with the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the People's Republic of China.
That American colleges and universities have provided unprecedented levels of access to foreign governments, corporations, and persons without adequate oversight.
The U.S. Department of Education say they've uncovered more than $6 billion in unreported gifts from countries including Qatar, China, and Saudi Arabia.
What strings are attached?
I wonder why they're unreported. I mean, if they're unreported, obviously universities are trying to hide something, right? Very, very strange that it's, $6 billion worth of unreported funding.
Attached to the billions of dollars that are flowing from foreign governments to American schools. And why is this happening in secret?
I don't think we all need to get into our defensive crouches. We're in a globalized world, and universities have relationships all over the world. And I think generally this is all a good thing, but there are always questions that should be asked. Who is giving this money and why? And are there strings attached?
Our academic institutions are being bought by foreign interests. And it'd be one thing if it were Western governments. It's another when you see foreign governments that are at odds with U.S. interests buying up influence.
When you have foreign funding, obviously it comes with an agenda. Nobody gives billions of dollars to set up a chair in Islamic studies at a university without the explicit intention of influencing the mindset of the students.
The strategic goal of a country who's pouring millions or billions of dollars into universities is to affect U.S. policy in a number of different ways.
They're trying to influence the minds of the next generation of congressmen, the next generation of lobbyists, the next generation of media, PR professionals, you name it.
My name is Raheel Raza. I'm a practicing Muslim, president of Muslims Facing Tomorrow.
About 3 years ago, I gave testimony to the U.S. Congress.
Remove foreign extremist funding from American campuses.
Why should our educational institutions be warped with a foreign ideology? And this is where Western governments and Westerners sometimes have difficulty grasping what the reality is, and that there is an agenda that is coming on the backs of these petrodollars.
Concerns are rising about China's influence over academic freedom at American universities.
China has given almost $1 billion to America's higher education system. Big part of that funding goes to run what are called Confucius Institutes.
Their purpose is to teach Chinese language and to put on cultural programming.
There are 66 Confucius Institutes at American colleges and universities, and over 540 worldwide.
But there's been investigations into whether those Confucius Institutes are bringing more than just education courses.
Tonight, there's concern about a Chinese propaganda education program. It's called the Confucius Institute, and lawmakers say that it's run and funded by the Chinese government.
They pick the curriculum, pick guest speakers.
Critics say that means China controls the narrative of the Confucius Institutes and can shut down opposing viewpoints.
Confucius Institutes have been under fire for years for suppressing free speech and promoting a slanted perception of Chinese history, among other things.
They eliminate certain information from classrooms, for example, like the Tiananmen Square massacre and the Hong Kong protest. They're changing the way that our students learn about China.
This is a foreign country paying to influence students on U.S. soil.
孔子学院很多人都在问我，你是这个软实力的重要组成部分什么的，因为我们想扩大我们的这个影响。
Oh wow, so they're not hiding it here. Right? So they say Confucius Institutes are an important part of our soft power.
软实力的重要组成部分什么的，因为我们想扩。
We want to expand China's influence. So that's the same strategy and tactic that a lot of the non-friendly countries are taking, like Qatar as well. It's all about expanding their soft power, right? That's how they expand their influence. That's why they're a very big threat to American civilization. And it's not just through their university funding. It's also through Al Jazeera, which is the, terrorist propaganda mouthpiece for the Muslim Brotherhood, and it's funded by Qatar.
And what that means is they have almost a permanent footprint in the U.S. system.
They're also trying to steal sensitive technology.
There are open espionage investigations involving China, now get this, in all 50 states, in high-tech, agriculture, and academia.
The Chinese government.
Guys, that's so true. There was actually a recent example of this happening in Canada. Wait, let me see if I can find it. Canada University IP. Where was it? Here we go. Wait, where was this? Let me find the link here. Yeah, here. So this is happening in all countries, guys, not just in the United States. Here, let me share this article with you. So this is from 2024. Canada limits researchers linked to China, Iran, Russia. So this was in January of 2024. So Canada restricted researchers linked to universities based in China, Russia, and Iran. That's, of course, the Islamic Republic of Iran, working on subjects critical to Canadian national security. Ottawa introduced measures to withhold government grants from researchers having ties to universities associated with the defense and security entities of countries posing potential security threats. While the majority of the listed universities are based in China, a handful from Iran and Russia are also included. While Canadian-led research is defined by, okay, whatever, the politicians are saying like, non-stuff. In 2022, Canada made headlines by arresting and charging a researcher with espionage, alleging an attempt to steal trade secrets for the benefit of China. There was another one as well. Let me see if I can find it. It was like this ridiculous one where I can't remember what it was. I'll have to find it. I'll have to find the article later, but it was basically like, I can't remember if it was like Western University or Windsor University, but there was like some researcher like who was linked with the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they were doing like a joint research thing on, I think it was like drones or something, like military drones. And I'm just sitting there, and like when this hit the news, I was just sitting there and I was flabbergasted. I was like, are you for real right now? Like, is this how stupid Canadian university researchers are, where you have a researcher from a hostile country, right? Like a hostile government, right? Because Iran is occupied by an Islamic dictatorship. So you have a researcher from a hostile dictatorship that comes to you and says, "Oh, let's work on a joint research project, working on like developing military weapons together." And then you're just like, "Oh yeah, sure, that sounds like a great idea." I mean, this is how ridiculous the scenario is. But yeah, like what this video that we're watching right now, it's not just limited to the United States. These bad actors are doing the same thing in various other countries, right? And so Canada is just one example of that. So that just came to my mind here when I heard about the theft of IP. Yeah, it happens in various countries, right?
This government has been very effectively stealing America's trade secrets, for generations.
Of the nearly 5,000 active FBI counterintelligence cases currently underway across the country, almost half are all related to China.
America's world-class university system has become a soft target in the global espionage war with China.
One of the most high-profile cases recently was that of Professor Charles Lieber,
the chairman of Harvard University's chemistry department, arrested by FBI agents, charged with lying about more than $1 million in payments from the Chinese government.
A Chinese medical student studying at Harvard is in custody right now.
Chinese-American professors have been fired after
failing. A researcher accused of concealing his ties to China.
We're estimating about $500 billion a year in economic loss just from the country of China.
With the protests and unrest in Hong Kong, and with the Uyghur camps.
Since 2017, up to 1 million Muslim Uyghurs have been placed in what some call concentration camps.
You have to ask yourself what kind of human rights violations are occurring there that we might be overlooking.
We are seeing the biggest internment probably since the end of World War II.
Activists say Beijing has done that to try to eliminate Islam within its borders.
China's crackdown on dissidents is now being described as the cruelest in decades.
And so the next time there's a revolution and people are massacred and they hunt down activists and drag them from their beds and they turn up in a river with their hands bound, you're going to say, well, that's got nothing to do with me. Good luck with that. I mean, if you sleep well at night, then that's who you are.
There are some entities within universities that are more aggressive about seeking money and much less aggressive about caring where it comes from. The MIT Media Lab, in retrospect, is certainly one of those.
Despite the scrutiny, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology has extended its partnership with the Russian research institute Skaltech, though that cooperation has raised U.S. concerns ever since it was launched.
We found that MIT received over $83 million from Russia. About half of that came from a Russian official who has been sanctioned for his involvement in Russia's malign activities around the world.
Viktor Vekselberg is a Russian billionaire who is quite close to Vladimir Putin.
The Russian oligarch was sanctioned for his part in helping to, quote, destabilize Western democracies.
U.S. intelligence officials fear the Russians are using Skolkovo for nefarious purposes.
Russia, it's well known that they have a long-standing information operation to try to influence Americans.
The world woke up to the reality of election meddling when Russia was exposed for interfering in the 2016 US election.
There is no serious dispute that malign foreign actors like Russia are working to subvert our democratic processes and sow chaos in our political system.
So when we see the Russians buying up influence in our education system, it does raise a lot of eyebrows.
Well, a lot of people think that universities should act with some moral center. They should reflect our conscience. That is specifically what most universities do not want to do. You know, they may have Latin phrases that talk about, you know, doing good in the world and so forth, but they are huge corporations and they are loath to do that.
The reality is that colleges in the United States today like to have flashy campuses. They like to have big programs, and that costs money.
U.S. universities are facing new scrutiny over their close ties to Saudi Arabia. Earlier this year, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman visited both Harvard and MIT on his first official tour to the U.S.
Mohammed bin Salman, known as MBS, is the crown prince, but really the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, came over to this country and took a grand tour.
He's taken meetings with Tim Cook, Bill Gates, and has even had Starbucks with Michael Bloomberg.
And he was welcomed as a modern leader, and that was his intent.
But the truth is, MBS is far from the political reformer that he's been presented as.
There's a photo of him shaking hands with the president of MIT. In the background of that photo is a man who was later implicated in the murder of Jamal Khashoggi.
Jamal Khashoggi, a pretty prominent journalist and columnist, went to the Saudi embassy in Turkey and they never came out.
He was inside that Saudi building and he was murdered.
A Turkish official tells the New York Times Saudi agents had dismembered his body with a bone saw they brought for the purpose.
And it was shocking and it was awful.
The CIA has concluded with high confidence that Mohammed bin Salman helped to orchestrate the murder of Jamal Khashoggi.
CNN has now obtained hundreds of text messages showing the Washington Post journalist blunt criticism of the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman,
saying, quote, "He's like a beast, like Pac-Man. The more victims he eats, the more he wants." Talk like this is dangerous for those from a country with one of the world's worst records for human rights.
But even before the Khashoggi incident, the Saudis were and are involved in a war in Yemen and are very credibly accused of war crimes.
The Saudi campaign of airstrikes has been catastrophic.
The man MIT is hosting has created the worst humanitarian crisis on Earth.
When bin Salman visited the United States in the spring, students were protesting it and condemning the visit and condemning the way that MIT and Harvard greeted him as a kind of reformer as opposed to the war criminal that he is.
When he comes to a campus like Harvard or like MIT, that provides him with a level of legitimacy that I don't think he would otherwise have.
You know, they want the prestige. They want the halo effect from being associated with these institutions.
the Saudis are sponsoring lots of sporting events in their country. And, this has been called sports washing. And it's really, in a way, the same thing. It's to say, look, we are a nation of the civilized world that does not murder journalists, does not behead our own dissidents. And we are, one of you. And because look at this, we've got this beautiful, golf tournament going on, this tennis match.
The critical thing with an academic institution.
It's true. And Qatar uses the same strategy as well.
Is how does the money affect the education? That's really what you're talking about.
I think in many cases, the issue with foreign funding is that what it usually buys is silence. It would almost be crazy to assume that a foreign power is going to keep giving money to a university that critiques that foreign power repeatedly.
No one likes to bite the hand that feeds them. Let me give you an example.
The feud between Canada and Saudi Arabia reaches a new level.
The Canadian government had some pretty mild criticism of MBS and Saudi Arabia, and the regime went crazy.
The Saudi Arabian government announced effective immediately that it was ending scholarships for some 16,000 Saudi students studying in Canada.
Universities charge foreign students tuition fees 4 times higher than their Canadian counterparts.
Mount St. Vincent, for example, took a $900,000 revenue hit.
The big thing that did for us is it exposed just how vulnerable we are.
That's a message that Saudi Arabia is sending out, which is don't criticize. And I believe that the universities heard that.
Institutions can tell themselves that they're maintaining a degree of separation and they're not allowing people to influence their thinking or the choices that they make. But it starts to seem like a lie when you look at the money.
If you're a parent and your child is going to a university, you can't really know which foreign governments are at least partially helping to fund that education.
We have the foreign government of Qatar, for example. We know Qatar is the second largest funder of international terrorism. They have also spent.
The first biggest sponsor is the Islamic Republic, occupying my country of Iran.
Billions of dollars trying to influence American curriculum, specifically at the Duke UNC program where they are training K through 12 teachers. We have been able to discover that it is a curriculum provided by a theologically motivated government. It is not objective. The federal government said.
That's crazy that Qatar is investing to train people who will become teachers for kindergarten to grade 12, right? Like they're going straight for that youth indoctrination, right? And you have to wonder what the motivation is behind. I mean, of course, I know what the motivation is, but for many of you who are watching who are new to this, I mean, you have to ask yourselves, why would a foreign country be interested in providing, let me rephrase this. Why would a foreign country be interested in investing in a curriculum that will impact future generations of a different country? Right? So think about it. Qatar is investing in training people who are going to then train the next generation of young Americans, right? So, and if I was a foreign country looking to engage in foreign interference, right, instead of going after like the young people, I would of course go after the educators, because the educators are going to have a much bigger impact, right? Because if you train the educators, and the educators are going to then indoctrinate, thousands, potentially tens of thousands of young people, right? So these are very important questions to ask. it's very scary that countries can do things like this, especially countries that are not allies of the United States. I mean, I don't hear of I don't hear of England, for example, um, investing in training United States educators, right? But Qatar is doing that. That is very, very scary.
Says a Middle Eastern studies program at Duke and UNC favors.
Go back a little bit here.
Theologically motivated government. It is not objective.
The federal government says a Middle Eastern studies program at Duke and UNC favors Islam while neglecting Christians, Jews, and other faiths in the region.
So we filed a Freedom of Information Act request, which would detail why on earth Qatar is trying to influence the curriculum of American students. And so far, UNC has refused to respond.
We've even seen foreign countries go to court to stop Americans from learning about these donations.
For example, my alma mater, Texas A&M, receives hundreds of millions of dollars from the government of Qatar.
This caught the attention of an attorney who was curious about how these donations were being used.
We decided we'd ask them where hundreds of millions of dollars of foreign funding were going and what kind of stipulations were attached to its use.
They filed a FOIA request to get this information, but at the last minute, Qatar sued the state of Texas to block release of this contract.
Texas A&M refuses to divulge. They say that this is due to the fact that they have a secretive agreement and they cannot violate that agreement, even though.
Wow. So basically, a foreign country is investing billions of dollars in the United States. And when US citizens want to find out where exactly the money is going and what strings are attached, that foreign government sues the American government to protect the interests of the foreign government. Do you see how Islamists are not just penetrating Western societies, but they're using our own laws against us to keep us in the dark about how deep the indoctrination and influence goes, right? I mean, you would think that it would be in the public interest of US citizens to understand the strings that are attached coming from foreign governments funding the education system, right? You would assume that you would want to know. Like I would just assume that you would want to put the interests of US citizens first. And yet when a group of US citizens were trying to find out what strings are attached with Qatari money, Qatar was able to sue the state of Texas to block that. Now, this is from 2020. I'll see if I can find, I'll do a part 2 later, and I'll see if I can find any updates on the status of this case, because I would be interested in knowing the final outcome of this case. Like this is wild.
Though this is a state university.
I was surprised. How can you argue as a public university that your sources of funding and possible influence are confidential or a business secret? I mean, there should be total transparency.
It's a very strange thing when you begin to see foreign countries from the Middle East suing the Attorney General of a state in a democracy for the release of information that should.
I just said that.
Be public.
Hi, welcome to NYU Abu Dhabi.
A lot of Americans probably don't know, but there are a number of branch campuses from American universities in undemocratic countries around the world.
In Qatar, in the UAE, in China, Thailand as well.
There's this expansion happening. You've got universities. You've got Duke is in China, Northwestern is in Qatar, NYU is in Abu Dhabi, Yale is in Singapore, 70 more, right?
Welcome to Northwestern.
Qatar has what they call Education City,
where you can even register with 5 other top American universities.
Qatar is spending billions of dollars so that American universities can set up campus in Doha.
I think it's great that these universities offer this type of education, but we also think that you learn best from a free and open education. And the concern here is that universities are maybe promising something that they can't deliver.
You talked about what liberties and the lack of liberties that you have in this country.
When they go into the community, they must be aware of the cultural conditions. They don't criticize the Islamic faith. They don't criticize the emir. And that's just de rigueur in Arab countries and the Arab monarchies. I think that's the reality.
It's important to note that Abu Dhabi and the UAE are kingdoms of fear. These are countries where dissent is absolutely illegal.
New York University professor Andrew Ross said he's been barred from entering the United Arab Emirates after he criticized the monarchy's exploitation of migrant laborers.
We've discovered a fairly consistent pattern of human rights abuses among the migrant workforce in the UAE and also in Qatar. So it was quite clear that this was a context for the barring of entry.
Back in 2018, Georgetown University in Qatar canceled a student-led debate because it provoked a controversy within the country. And the debate was focusing on the depiction of God as a woman. And Qatar has a blasphemy law. So the question is there, do they support freedom of expression, or do they want students to respect a blasphemy law? Because the two are fundamentally in tension. And so we actually put GUQ on our 10 worst list of 2019 because this is something that we think is important. You can't promise students something that you can't actually deliver.
And here's the central contradiction. A university, one of the purposes of a university is to promote democratic values.
Yes, right.
Well, how is that going to occur in a non-democratic regime, in a non-democratic country?
Northwestern has a well-known communications school, journalism school.
In 2013, Northwestern University signed a memo of understanding with Al Jazeera, which was intended to facilitate collaboration between the two entities.
We're often involved with projects here at Al Jazeera so Northwestern students can get a true sense of a career in journalism at a major news network.
First of all, let's just note for a minute that Al
I know what he's going to say. He's going to say that Al Jazeera is basically the foreign mouthpiece for Qatar, and it basically just promotes Islamic terrorism and Islamist ideology.
Al Jazeera is owned and controlled by Qatar.
Al Jazeera, the Middle East's most high-profile and widely watched network, is considered by many to be a propaganda tool for Islamists in Qatar.
Al Jazeera's biggest problem has always been credibility. It was having a lot of trouble expanding in America.
Al Jazeera America was shuttered in 2016.
Lots of turmoil centering on charges of discrimination, racism, bias, and various resulting lawsuits.
And so Al Jazeera decided to rebrand itself as AJ Plus.
AJ Plus is Al Jazeera's opportunity to tackle a new audience.
Al Jazeera is one of the most influential Islamist propaganda, pro-terror outlets in the world.
Al Jazeera most recently got into trouble because they were promoting Holocaust denial in their videos.
Did you see that, guys? So AJ Plus, right? So AJ Plus is catered towards more like the younger, Gen Z, younger millennials. And this is a kind of propaganda that they push. So one of the reasons that a lot of young Americans, unfortunately, engage in Holocaust denial or believe believe the Holocaust never happened, is because of this sort of propaganda that AJ Plus and Al Jazeera and of course Qatar, right, have been putting out there. So whenever you see Al Jazeera or AJ Plus, that's basically Qatar. And this is the kind of nonsense that they put out there. And of course, Al Jazeera is also um, in this day, they're framing Islamic terrorists as resistance fighters, freedom fighters, oppression, all that nonsense, right? So what you're seeing today is not new. AJ has been like Qatar, under the guise of Al Jazeera and AJ Plus, they have been spreading this sort of propaganda for quite a number of years now. They have been doing this, and it's sort of been flying under the radar because a lot of people just they don't pay attention, or it's just not on their radar. But this is how they have been indoctrinating young people. I mean, just look at that, right? Like, it's just like such a disgusting headline. Like this in and of itself should have been enough of a prompt to just ban Al Jazeera in the United States, and I think in all Western democratic societies. But Al Jazeera, again, Qatar is taking advantage of the freedoms provided in Western countries, like freedom of speech, for example, freedom of the press, freedom of journalism, that kind of stuff. They're taking advantage of these freedoms in Western countries. Freedoms, by the way, which do not exist in Qatar. There is no freedom of speech in Qatar. Al Jazeera is not allowed to criticize the Qatari government or the Qatari royal family in any way, shape, or form. So there is no freedom of speech in Qatar, and yet they take advantage of the freedom of speech in United States and other Western countries to promote their Islamist propaganda. And when the rest of us, pointed out, the Islamists come back and they use our own freedoms against us to say, well, there's freedom of speech. We can say and do what we want. But yet in their own countries, there is no freedom of speech.
Voting Holocaust denial in their videos.
ينقسم الناس إلى مجموعات ما بين من ينكر الإبادة أو حتى من يتهم الحركة الصهيونية بتضخيمها لصالح مشروع.
Most of the people, I bet you, who tune into AJ Plus don't even realize that it's an entity of a foreign government with a very specific purpose and goal to influence American public opinion.
Essentially, what was happening was the government of Qatar and Al Jazeera were hiring Northwestern University to have its students build Al Jazeera's credibility and improve and expand its operations, including on American soil.
Soon I'll be off to Washington, D.C. for my residency at a news network, so I'm really excited to get more hands-on experience and really put to use what I've learned so far.
This is a war of ideas. We have said this all along. It is not a war of weapons, it is a war of ideas.
Besides funding college campuses, foreign governments fund think tanks, media outlets, activist organizations. College campuses are just one element of this program.
Our democracy is for sale.
Just look at the numbers. Look at the numbers of how many institutions, how much money it is, and how also the trajectory. Ultimately, if it wasn't successful, would the government of Saudi Arabia or the government of Russia continue to pour money into that black hole just out of the goodness of their hearts? Nation states, nations don't do that.
If you look at a map, what you see is a corrupting influence of nationwide proportions.
One way to address the impact of this is to force the academic institutions to be accountable for the decisions that they're making.
American students have a right to know who is behind the curriculum, who is funding the curriculum, what strings are attached.
When you go to buy cigarettes or a health supplement, there's always those warning labels. But when you pick a class or you pick a professor, those labels aren't there. Students are flying blind.
At the end of the day, there are children. They're the future of this nation.
As a mother and as a mother bear, I want to safeguard everything that is so pure and valuable about the society that we live in and the values that we have. I don't want my daughter growing up without the same choices and the same freedom that I have had.
Wow. So that was a documentary from 5 years ago, about what American universities don't want you to know about their funding. And 5 years ago, people were already sounding the alarm quite significantly about Qatari foreign influence. And as you can tell, the majority of this video was focused on Qatar. It was focused on Al Jazeera, which is the Qatari mouthpiece, and it was also focused on the fact that when American citizens were trying to um, get information relating to the funding provided by Qatar, Qatar actually sued a Texas university Qatar sued the state of Texas in order to prevent them from releasing that information. And this wasn't even a private university. This was a public university, right? Like a state university. So pretty scary stuff there. I actually found, here's something else I wanted to share with you. So this is from April of this year, April 2, 2025. And it's from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, the FDD, and the title is called "Qatar's Footprint in the American Higher Education System." So it's about 3 minutes long. So I just wanted to share this with you guys because this is going to give us a little bit more updated info as well. So as you can see, there is a lot of information when it comes to how Qatar has been influencing American universities and continues to influence young people in American universities.
Chairman, representatives, thank you. My name is Natalie Econo. I'm a research analyst at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington, D.C., which is a nonpartisan research institute focusing on national security and foreign policy. My work at FDD primarily focuses on Qatari influence, which is what I want to talk to you about today, predominantly in the higher education system. Last year, Qatar was among the top 5 foreign donors to American colleges and universities, beating traditionally deep-pocketed donors like China and Saudi Arabia. Qatar has approximately 11% of the world's natural gas resources, but only 330,000 citizens, so it has ample wealth to spend buying prestige and influence in this country. According to federal disclosure data, American colleges and universities accepted $6.25 billion from Qatar since 2001. But Qatar's spending in the higher education system likely exceeds this figure by a mile, and there's 2 reasons to believe that. First, academic institutions in this country that routinely accept lots of money from Qatar fail to comply with their federal disclosure requirements. And second, Qatar has often sought to cover its tracks. Here in Texas, Qatar previously filed a lawsuit to prevent Texas A&M from disclosing funding records. A Texas judge eventually ordered that the documents be made public, revealing almost $500 million in formerly undisclosed grants and contracts. Wow. Qatar is an interest.
So that's the case, guys. That's the case from the previous video that we were watching. So that one was from December of 2020. This is from April of 2025. So yeah, there you go. The reason Qatar tried to prevent federal disclosures, they didn't want, I guess, the public to know how much exactly they had invested in that American university. And now it turns out it was $500 million. I mean, thank God that judge at least put the interests of U.S. citizens first, as opposed to the interests of a foreign terrorist state that is not the ally of the United States.
Interesting case because it enjoys a close relationship with America, American allies, but also with American adversaries. Qatar's wealth enables it to play both sides. Qatar has sponsored a range of extremist groups like Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Taliban. And by pumping money into the American higher education system, Qatar is able to avoid scrutiny for its adversarial behavior while spreading hostile ideologies. For example, Georgetown's campus in Doha hosted a conference in the fall on the future of Gaza. That conference featured a former Al Jazeera executive, which, by the way, Al Jazeera is owned by the Qatari government. The conference featured a former Al Jazeera executive who praised Hamas's October 7th massacre and previously delivered a 10-minute eulogy for a Muslim Brotherhood-aligned cleric who endorsed suicide bombings against Israelis. Qatar's influence on campus is a problem when it comes to anti-Semitism, which we've witnessed escalate tremendously since October 7th. While I haven't been able to draw a direct line between Qatari funding and specific instances of campus anti-Semitism, what I do know is that Qatari funding on college campuses obviates the need for alumni donors, and by forcing administrations to be responsive to Qatar and Qatari entities, they're yielding to a government that has sponsored terrorist groups, sided with Islamists against the West, and failed to hold Hamas accountable for the Gaza war. Thank you.
Good little speech there, introductory speech. Someone in the chat asked, where does Qatar get their money from? Oil and gas reserves. Specifically, off the top of my head, it's the Pars. There's like a gas reserve in the Persian Gulf. I think it's the Pars gas reserve or something, natural gas reserve, that was discovered in 1991, I believe. And that is shared between the Islamic Republic occupying Iran and Qatar. That's where they get vast majority of their funding from. Okay, so now I found this another podcast here. So up until now, we've spoken about Qatari funding. We've spoken about how they are investing in universities, how they have been investing in Western universities for quite a long time now, in order to infiltrate and indoctrinate. So, what is the outcome now of this indoctrination, and what is the end result of Qatar investing over $6 billion in United States universities since 2001? This video will give a very, very good example. I'll provide my thoughts as well as we watch along. But yeah, I found this and I thought that this was very interesting. But I just want to say, guys, if you haven't seen Qatar 101, part one, make sure you go back and watch that as well, because I'm kind of taking a systematic, approach here, where I'm starting with, introductory videos. Now, I've shown you various videos from various sources talking about Qatari foreign interference in universities. For example, in today's podcast, started with Mark Levin. And then, of course, there was this documentary by Journeyman Pictures from 2020. Okay. And then, of course, we saw the clip from Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. But now we're going to watch this one, which kind of gives you a better understanding of how that $6 billion, the over $6 billion of Qatari funding, has contributed to destabilizing the West. And we've seen much more of that in the last 2 years since the genocidal massacre of over 1,200 Israelis on October 7, 2023, by Hamas terrorists. So here we go.
Have a little idea of what might happen here in America and Canada in 15 years from today. Look at Europe today, because America and Canada are.
So I just want to say this is called The Rise of Islamic Fundamentalism in America. Qadar explains Qatar's role and Western vulnerability. It's my first time watching this channel, so let's see what it's all about.
Behind Europe in a time lap of maybe 15 years in this regard. And the Atlantic Ocean is not wide enough to keep America and Canada safe from what happens today in Europe. Universities, gazillions of dollars are being poured by Qatar. And Qatar is the enemy of mankind. Qatar is the enemy of Westernism. Qatar is the enemy of America.
Oh, wait. So someone in the YouTube comments is saying Qatar tried that in India and the Hindus stopped it immediately. Is that true? Qatar. Let me see if I can find something on that. That's interesting. I'll see if I can find something on that. Maybe I'll play that in the next episode.
New York, which experienced the worst jihadi action only 25 or 24 years ago, today was occupied peacefully by the New Yorkers who voted for the reoccupation of New York.
Welcome to the Viktor Frankl podcast. I'm Lori Fine, Esquire, here with my co-host, Rabbi Daniel Schonbach. We're here today with Professor Mordechai Kedar. He is a professor at Bar-Ilan University, and he was a long-time IDF lieutenant colonel in the 8200 unit, which is the equivalent of Israel's NSA, doing intelligence work. He is fluent in Arabic and an expert on the Arab world. Professor Kedar, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure and my honor to be here.
We're very excited to have you with us today. There's so much to discuss, lots happening in the world of what's going on between the United States and Israel, what's happening here domestically, and also what's happening in Israel. So let's dive right in. This week, we saw the Saudis come to Washington, D.C. and strike up a new agreement with the United States. Can you talk a little bit about that and what your thoughts are on that new development?
Well, the Middle East is sharply divided between countries which are wholeheartedly committed to wipe Israel off the map. I'm talking about Iran. I'm talking organizations like Hezbollah.
I hate when people say Iran because it's the Islamic Republic of Iran. Prior to 1979, Iran was actually an ally of Israel. Iran was an ally of the United States. That flag you see up above me, that's the real flag of Iran. That's the pre-Islamic flag of Iran. So it's just always frustrating when people say Iran, because the issue is not Iran, the issue is not Iranians, the issue is Islamic fundamentalism and jihad and Sharia law. That's the issue. Because again, prior to 1979, Iran and Israel were allies. So it's just very frustrating. Also, the official name of the country is not Iran. The official name of the country is the Islamic Republic of Iran, because when the Islamic dictatorship took over, not only did they change our flag, they also changed the name of our country. So, I like to refer to it as occupied Iran. And I never refer to the government as Iran. I always refer to it as the Islamic Republic occupying Iran. So just want to point that out because, I've explained this in previous live streams as well. If you want to target the root cause of terrorism, you have to be able to identify the root cause of terrorism, right? Like you can't if a patient goes to see a doctor, the doctor can't prescribe a cure unless they properly diagnose the patient to find out what the issue is. And the issue is not Iran. The issue is Islamic fundamentalism, that radical Islamic ideology that overtook Iran in 1979. And you can go check out all the videos that I have on my channel, the numerous live streams I've done where I've spoken about the difference between Iran and the Islamic Republic. I also have a lot of documentaries and videos where I talk about what Iran was like prior to 1979. So just want to point that out. It's just always frustrating when people say Iran because I'm an Iranian, and the history of Iranians and Jews goes back thousands of years. I know what he means, right? Like I know what he means when he says Iran, he's referring to the Islamic Republic, but the vast majority of people who aren't familiar with the Middle East, they don't know that difference. They don't know that nuance. And so when people just keep on saying Iran, they think it's all of Iran, and that's literally not the case at all. It's the Islamic Republic, which is, the dictatorship within the country.
Hezbollah, Hamas, and the likes. And on the underside, we see countries which have no problem with Israel. Actually, they normalize their relations with Israel, like the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco. Saudi Arabia is one of them, because Saudi Arabia is actually struggling to survive, really, literally, vis-a-vis Iran. The Saudis remember very, very well what happened at 4 o'clock in the morning on the 14th of September, 2019. It was like 5 years ago when the Iranians attacked 2 major sites of oil export belong to Aramco, one in place named Khurais, and the other one is Abqaiq, and they destroyed them totally. And they actually paralyzed like half of the ability of Saudi Arabia to export oil for like half a year. This was a big, big blow to the Saudis from the Iranians. Apparently, the reason was that Iran understood that Saudi Arabia is marching forward to normalization with Israel, something which happened half a year later in the signing of the Abraham Accords, while Saudi Arabia was out of the scenery because of this hit which the Iranians hit the Saudis. The Saudis are the victims of the Iranians before Israel. And this is why they want to have a good relations with the West, with America, and I'm not afraid of the Saudis at all. The Saudis, if they were not afraid of the Iranians, they would normalize the relations with Israel long ago. So this is why this F-35 business with the Saudis, I'm not afraid of it.
Would you agree that if the Saudis are stronger, actually, Israel is weaker because they need us less now with their own weaponry as advanced as?
I wanna like get to the part where they speak about Qatar. Let me see if I can find that.
I would say forced, but definitely felt that they are obliged to go to Qatar after Israel attacked Hamas.
Okay, let's get to.
And with Saudis and Israel in the near future.
Okay.
Look,
this is good for like, another time, but I want to get to the part about universities.
What I advocate is to.
And I
all right, let's see if we can
love
get to the part about universities.
That was so peaceful work out. I don't know if the examples you gave tend to be countries that are very much
families running Judea and Samaria. Do they have to be?
All right, where's the?
Which are actually totally opposite from each other.
Colonizer, etc., and they're teaching this as truth.
Okay, here we go. I think I got to the part where they talk about universities.
Able to, or really unwilling to, recognize as to more domestic issues.
All right, I found the part. So here's where they're going to talk. I think this is where they're going to talk about Qatar's role in indoctrinating young people in Western universities.
As a long-term academic yourself, I'm curious what you think of the struggles that we've been having over the last 2 years, and really much longer than that, within American academic circles, where we see that the academy has been so unable to, or really unwilling to, recognize as propaganda, as advocacy, so many aspects of what is being taught about Israel committing genocide, about Israel being an illegitimate state and a colonizer, et cetera, et cetera. And they're teaching this as truth. What do you think might be done, and where do you—
Thank you, Mr. Zabuzaki. Thank you, Mr. Zabuzaki, for the support. I appreciate that. Um, Stick around because I'm actually going to be revamping the paid membership perks for my YouTube channel. One thing that I'm going to be starting to do is I'm going to be doing members only live streams. So for those people who are not just subscribers, but people who have a paid membership to support my YouTube channel, I'm going to start doing members only live streams, and it's going to be much more interactive. So it'll be an opportunity for us to have a conversation, to answer your questions, watch videos together. I also do have a members only message board that's going to become much more active. I was actually away from YouTube for the last 2 weeks because I was changing locations and upgrading my office and getting everything new set up. That's why the background right now is different from my previous live streams. This is my new setup. I'm still getting used to it, but you can expect a lot more live streams and a lot more members only content as well. So for everyone who's watching, if you're interested in seeing more content or engaging more with me, make sure that you follow me on YouTube and become a member, because there are going to be a lot of member perks and benefits as well. Thank you so much for the support. Really appreciate that.
Where do you think that comes from, and what do you think that those who oppose those ideas could possibly do to help that?
Well, the struggle in the academia started more or less like 40 years ago, in the big debate between Edward Said and his school of thought from Columbia University in New York on one side, and the other side, which was led by Professor Bernard Lewis in Princeton. These two professors of Middle East were totally different in their approach. Bernard Lewis said that the history of the Arab world and the Islamic world should be studied as it was, with the problems, with the violence, with the struggles between the Sunni and the Shia, between Arabs and Persians, between Kurds and Turks. Yeah, and struggles sometimes were bloody struggles. And yes, we have to be realistic and talk about the realism, and also about Islam and all kinds of commandments in Islam, which are rather problematic when it comes to modern world. And he was very...
I can see exactly where this is going, because whenever we try to raise awareness about some of those, problematic commands, we're accused of Islamophobia. Every time I speak about, how the Arab Muslim invaders colonized Iran, my country, I get accused of Islamophobia. And any sort of criticism against Islam is accused of, Islamophobia. So yeah, this is very, very interesting here. But yeah, this is how the Islamists operate, right? They try to shut down all legitimate criticism by playing the victim, even though the people who are criticizing are generally the ones who are the victims of Islamic terrorism and Islamic colonialism.
Very realistic about Islam in the Arab world. On the other side, Edward Said blamed the West for everything which goes wrong in the Middle East. Blame the colonialism, blame the imperialism, blamed the British, blamed the Americans, blamed everybody else, because the Middle East is like a Jannah fayha, as they say in Arabic, a flourishing heaven on earth, and only the Westerners, including the Jews, who the settlers in Palestine, actually they ruined the Arab world, and they pushed it into violence, and all the violence which we see in the Arab world is the result of the interference and the bad intentions of the colonialism and the imperialism, which studied Islam only to justify its bad intentions vis-a-vis the Arab world, and to take advantage of the treasures of the Arab world, especially the oil.
Wow. So that narrative, right? That false narrative that this gentleman, Mordechai Kadar, is exposing. This is something that was being pushed 40 years ago, and um, it took the Islamists and the jihadis 40 years to push that narrative enough so that now it is considered, unfortunately, something. It's unfortunately a very popular belief amongst the younger generation, right? Like, do you see how it's taken 40 years of indoctrination and infiltration into Western society for these Islamists to push their false narrative and their fake propaganda and their anti-Western, anti-imperialist narrative, right?
So this is Edward Said. Edward Said actually wrote a book, a very famous book, Orientalism. Orientalism, where he bashed all the Western approach to the Middle East, and the researchers who actually meant only to prove that the West is superior and the East is inferior. This is why the colonialism and imperialism are justified. Okay, these are the two, I would say, major schools of thought when it comes to the Middle East. Unfortunately, too many people in the American, and not only in the European, also in Israel, academic institutions fell in love with the Edward Said approach and blamed us, as the West, as the Americans, as the Europeans, and as the Israelis.
That's because a lot of people in academia are very leftist, very progressive, very, very, communist Marxist in their leanings. And so, because these people already harbor anti-imperialist ideologies when it comes to their political worldview, because they've already been influenced by the Chinese, by the Russians, by that, very, very far left propaganda, because they're already in that headspace, it's much easier for them to align their pre-existing beliefs with the anti-imperialist rhetoric of the Islamists and the jihadis.
For everything which goes wrong in the Arab world, the Arab world is heaven on earth, but because of the interference of others, and of course the settlers in Palestine, the Jewish settlers, everything goes wrong. So this is unfortunately what happened.
Is this like pause or something?
And even organizations like MESA, Middle East Studies Association here in America, was taken over by this school of thought to a degree that some hundreds of researchers left MESA and established a new research organization named ASMIA, Association for the Study of the Middle East and Africa, led by the late Bernard Lewis and Fuad Ajami, a Lebanese who also was realistic. So even the American, and not only the American, research community is divided, sharply divided.
This is wild to me that anyone would would believe the narrative that's being pushed by the jihadis and the Islamists, right? I'm glad he's calling it out. I mean, what's their excuse for Lebanon? All these, like, jihadis and Islamists who, blame America and Israel for everything. What's their excuse for Lebanon? Lebanon 50 years ago was a majority Christian country until it was invaded by the Palestinians and, of course, Hezbollah. And then now, unfortunately, half of Lebanon is occupied by these Islamic terrorists, and many Christian Lebanese had to actually flee Lebanon. I mean, what's their excuse for Lebanon, right? Like when you shine a light on the narrative that's being pushed by the pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas side, their arguments fail. They don't hold up.
Divided between those who blame the West for every shortcoming of the Islamic and the Arab world, while the realistic ones who show the reality in the Arab and the Islamic world. So when the woke started to wake up, and the liberals and the progressives, they actually fell in love with Edward Said. And this is actually what you see today, that everybody's blaming Israel and blaming America, blaming Europe for centuries of colonialism. And this is why today we have to return to love Islam, to love the Arabs, and to enable them to migrate to our countries, even at the price of changing the human landscape of Europe and maybe America and Canada as well. And let me tell you,
I mean, just look at certain communities in Canada and look at certain communities in the United States, right? I haven't even commented on the Somalian fraud scandal in the United States yet. I'm saving that for another episode. But United States officials have come out and said that the Somalians have defrauded somewhere around $8 billion of taxpayer money. And some of that money has actually been funneled to Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is a Somali Islamic terrorist group in Somalia. So, yeah, I mean, it's wild. I mean, it's already happening. And, what the American administration is currently finding out in Somalia, finding out about certain members of the Somali community in the United States and how they're sending money to fund Islamic terrorists in Somalia. That's the exact same thing that other communities have done in other countries through various charities and organizations as well. So it's the exact same pattern everywhere you go.
What happens today here in the United States in this regard, you saw in Europe like 15 years ago. If you want to have a little idea of what might happen here in America and Canada in 15 years from today, look at Europe today. Because America and Canada are behind Europe in a time lap of maybe 15 years in this regard. And the Atlantic Ocean is not wide enough to keep America and Canada safe from what happens today in Europe. If Americans do not wake up to see the invasion of Muslim Brotherhood by Qatari money,
and care
by Qatari money, look at what happens in the universities. Only recently, ISGAP, my colleague, my friend, Professor Charles Asher Small, exposed the Qatari sponsorship,
here we go.
sponsorship in American universities. Gazillions of dollars are being poured by Qatar. And Qatar.
Okay, I just want to say it's not gazillions. He's obviously exaggerating, but the exact number, or not the exact number, what we know of is since 2001, over $6 billion of Qatari money has been invested in American universities, and a third of that has been invested since 2021.
Qatar is the enemy of mankind. Qatar is the enemy of the Westernism. Qatar is the enemy of America, of Israel. Look, I think 13 years ago.
Qatar is also the enemy of Iranians who are fighting against the Islamic Republic. One of the things that happened during the FIFA World Cup, that when it was being hosted in Qatar, is that when Iranians went there, they were waving the lion and sun flag, the one that was, the one that's hanging up there behind me. That's the, real flag of Iran. We don't believe in the Allahu Akbar symbol flag. But one thing that Qatar did is any Iranian who had this flag or, was protesting against the Islamic Republic, they were arrested and they were handed over to Islamic regime officials who were in Qatar. That got zero media attention outside of Iranian media outlets. But yes, Qatar is also an enemy of Iranians who are fighting to overthrow the Islamic Republic occupying our country.
In 2012, I published an article, and it is online, you can find it, under my name, Mordechai Kedar, Know Thine Enemy. Know Thine Enemy, about Qatar. Already 13 years ago, I pointed that Qatar is the enemy of Israel, enemy of the West, enemy of Westernism, enemy of everything which we believe in. Because this is what they are. They support the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the spearhead of the Islamic activity against the West. And unfortunately, in the United States, you have organizations like CARE, an organization which devoted to promote Islamic causes.
Guys, remember that video from Bridget Gabriel? I always say this and I never do it. I need to save that video by Bridget Gabriel where she exposes CARE. Let me bring it up again here. Let's see. I want to find a different one. Okay. Here we go. So this is Bridget Gabriel. She's a Christian Lebanese. She had to escape Lebanon. I believe it was during the Lebanese Civil War. Production note. Okay, I'll fix the flag thing after. Thank you, Major, for that. But here is Bridget Gabriel talking about CARE. So this video, where was that video we were just watching? So this video here, this guy who's talking about CARE, where was it? So he's talking about organizations like CARE. CARE is an organization that's connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. So here's a quick explanation from Bridget Gabriel. She's been speaking about this for quite a long time. And here's her post from December 22, 2023. This is the truth about the Council on American Islamic Relations, otherwise known as CARE. Every single concerned American citizen needs to hear this.
Hello, this is Brigitte Gabriel. Today, I want to talk about...
Oops, where'd it go?
CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations and their connection to Hamas. So how did CARE actually come about? The FBI, when it used to do good work, confirmed that Islamic Association of Palestine, IAP, and the Holy Land Foundation, HLF, constituted the main entities of pro-Hamas machinery set up in America. The FBI, who's been monitoring these people, recorded a secret meeting in Philadelphia at a Marriott hotel. 20 top leaders of Hamas support network in America were present. The FBI transcripts were introduced as evidence during the Holy Land Foundation trial, the largest terrorism financing trial ever in the history of the United States. Islamic Association for Palestine, IAP, was represented by its president, Omar Ahmed, who later became founder of Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE. IAP's Director of Public Relations, Nihad Awad, who is currently the National Executive Director of CARE. In the meeting, participants were urged to refer to Hamas as Samah, Hamas spelled backwards, or simply as the movement throughout the meeting and in phone conversations. The speakers stressed the necessity to speak in terms that would appeal to Americans. They should speak about democracy and freedom of expression, concepts that are dear to most Americans, that they should be playing a very important tune to the average American, which is the issue of democracy, the issue of representation, end quote. The participants opted for a two-pronged approach. One, in support of jihad in Palestine by fundraising in the US. The Holy Land Foundation was to collect funds for Hamas in the name of orphans and needy children. Two, helping Hamas by influencing American public opinion and policymakers. Omar Ahmed, later founder of CARE, stressed the need to increase the committee's influence with Congress. He said, this can be achieved by infiltrating US media, universities, and research centers, end quote. Ahmed spoke of the need of broadcasting the Islamic point of view in US media, adding that when he had appeared on CNN and talked in the way he spoke, this greatly reduces the severity of allegations of radicalism, end quote. He was referring to the appearance of IAP Public Relations Director Nihad Awad on CNN Crossfire when he advanced Hamas's point of view with words that were palpable to the American public. The participants agreed that a new organization with no evident ties to Hamas and appear as moderate in the eyes of Americans should be founded. U.S. authorities believe, based on ample evidence, that organization is the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, which was founded in Washington, D.C. a few months later. In fact, IAP President Omar Ahmed and Public Relations Director Nihad Awad, both members of the Palestine Committee who attended the Philadelphia meeting, became CARE's Chairman Emeritus and Executive Director. Rafiq Jabbar, who had been IAP President, also became a founding director of CARE, while former IAP's employee Ibrahim Hooper became CARE's Director of Communications. Ghassan El-Ashi, the treasurer of the Holy Land Foundation, became the founding board member of CARE's Texas chapter. In the Holy Land Foundation trial in Dallas in 2008, our government handed down 108 guilty verdicts to Muslim Americans, raising over $12 million in the US and sending it to Hamas and terrorists overseas. This is where CARE was designated as an unindicted co-conspirator. As soon as Obama was elected, his Attorney General, Eric Holder, stopped the handing down of the indictments, and the Obama-Biden administration opened their arms and the U.S. wallet to CARE in the name of fighting Islamophobia. This trend of harboring Hamas sympathizers in our midst continues to this day in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, the biggest scam is how Islamic terrorists have taken advantage of DEI to promote their jihadi and terrorist ideology and narratives in Western societies. I 100% agree with Bridget Gabriel on that. I have done previous live streams where I've spoken about her and featured her videos. I definitely have more I am planning on doing in the future, so make sure that you like and subscribe to my channel. But she is such an important voice. But there you go. So there's a little backgrounder on CARE. For those of you who might not be familiar with CARE, that was Bridget Gabriel. She is Lebanese Christian. All right, let's go back to the video we were watching now, where this gentleman is speaking about Qatar's role in Western universities and Western society in general.
An organization which devoted to promote Islamic causes, and they operate organizations like MSA, Muslim Student Association, which spreads anti-Jewish hatred in American academic institutions, and many more organizations. And unfortunately, this organization enjoys the status of 501c3, maybe C4 as well, because it's a good organization, unfortunately. And Qatar, unfortunately, today is viewed by the West as the friend, including here, because people don't read what is being published in Arabic, especially by those who are sponsored by Qatar, especially the Muslim Brotherhood, how they spread hatred against the West, against America, against Israel included, against the Westernism. And unfortunately, people think that Qatar is the friend. No, Qatar is the enemy.
I agree.
And I think that Qatari money is a money which nobody with the right mind should touch.
I think I would just want to point out for our listeners that you were talking about really two separate threads. You have the academic debate, which is more of on an intellectual level, whether Said's version of analysis versus Bernard Lewis's analysis of the situation is more accurate. But then you also have layered on top of that the Qatari-led, but also sponsored by others, deliberate, let's call it perversion of academic inquiry and transformation of what we would consider academic freedom into something that is more like a propaganda campaign. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. Look, the rift in the research community between Said and Lewis actually is a rift between realism and idealism. Because don't forget that any academic institution which falls into the trap of Said, every single year it breeds people to the media. You know, the graduates are being fed with the propaganda of Edward Said and its likes and its followers. They go to the media, they go to the politics, they go to public sphere, they become influencers in the social media. They are everywhere, and it's like a scheme of people who took over the public sphere, and when they become, let's say, staffers of Congress members and senators, they actually control what these people think. And this is the problem. It's not only the professor in the university. It's his graduates who are everywhere. And I'm talking about something which is...
Yeah, so this is what I was, alluding to in the previous video that we were watching, the one from 2020, this one here. This video here, what American universities don't want you to know about their funding, where I was, kind of pointing out the rationale behind why Qatar is going after educating those who will then educate others, right? Because if you just if you just focus on the students, that's not going to go anywhere. But if you focus on training the educators and indoctrinating the educators, then the educators are going to be doing your dirty work for you in order to indoctrinate people into their, Islamist terrorist ideology. And that's what this gentleman is referring to as well. That's exactly why you're seeing young students right now burning the flag of America, even though they're American themselves, right? It's because they've been indoctrinated by this anti-American, anti-West, anti-imperialist ideology that's infiltrated American universities and has been around for 40 years now. Mm-hmm. Yep. we can leave this part for another time. I just want to get back to where they're talking about Qatar. Here we go. Okay. Oh my gosh, guys, I stop. Okay. I forgot to share the tab. I'm so sorry. I forgot to switch the tab back. Okay. This is why. Thank you for reminding me, guys. Oh my gosh. So did I miss that whole part? Okay. Jeez. Okay. All right, let me go to where I was. Okay, here we go.
If you want to have a little idea of what might happen here in America,
We played this part.
Academic institutions and many more organizations. And unfortunately, this organization enjoys the status of 501c3, maybe C4 as well, because it's a good organization, unfortunately. And Qatar, unfortunately, today is viewed by the West as the friend, including here, because people don't read what is being published in Arabic, especially by those who are sponsored by Qatar, especially the Muslim Brotherhood, how they spread hatred against the West, against America, against Israel included, against the Westernism. And unfortunately, people think that Qatar is the friend. No, Qatar is the enemy. And I think that Qatari money is a money which nobody with the right mind should touch.
I think I would just want to point out for our listeners that you were talking about really two separate threads. You have the academic debate, which is more of on an intellectual level, whether Said's version of analysis versus Bernard Lewis's analysis of the situation is more accurate. But then you also have layered on top of that the Qatari-led, but also sponsored by others, deliberate, let's call it perversion of academic inquiry and transformation of what we would consider academic freedom into something that is more like a propaganda campaign. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. Look, the rift in the research community between Said and Lewis actually is a rift between realism and idealism. Because don't forget that any academic institution which falls into the trap of Said, every single year it breeds people to the media. You know, the graduates are being fed with the propaganda of Edward Said and its likes and its followers. They go to the media, they go to the politics, they go to public sphere, they become influencers in the social media. They are everywhere. And it's like a scheme of people who took over the public sphere. And when they become, let's say, staffers of Congress members and senators, they actually control what these people think. And this is the problem. It's not only the professor in the university. It's his graduates who are everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about something which is 40 years already. 40 years of graduates who are everywhere. And they are educated by this kind of ideology that America is bad, Look, the woke culture is also part of it, and the ultra progressives.
Yep.
And this is what you see here in the States. The rift is also about many issues connected to the mere being of the United States as a state.
Yeah. All right, let's fast forward to, I think he's going to talk about, now he's going to talk about radicalism in the United States. Here we go. All right.
Lori, do you want to ask the final question?
Yeah, I wonder if you think that Jews in America should be supporting. We're looking for what to support, and do you think that there is hope for Israel to remain to advance its interests vis-a-vis all of these many threats coming in? And if American Jews want to support Israel, do you think that we should be advocating for these compromises, or do you think that it is more helpful to Israel if Jews are giving a sort of blanket support as in the past?
Look, I'm a very small expert about American Jewry, but from what I see, when I come to this country, to speak, and I hear things and I read things, the American Jewry is a whole spectrum between ultra-Orthodox and Reform, and liberals. It's a big variety.
I don't think he's going to speak about Qatar there. All right, so that's the part that I wanted to play, where he's speaking about the Islamic, the Islamic radicalist indoctrination and how it's been going on for 40 plus years. And so I'm going to end my live stream with a final video now. So this video it's a very short video, but now it sort of summarizes everything that we have been talking about for the last 2.5 hours on this live stream when it comes to how Qatar is indoctrinating young people in universities in order to infiltrate and influence young minds that will then lead to the destabilization of Western society. So here is the final video for this particular live stream. If you've enjoyed my live stream, make sure that you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want more content, definitely you're welcome to become a paid member. I think membership is like $10 a month or something. And I'm going to be starting to do members only live streams as well as members only content as well. And, that gives you an opportunity as well to be a bit more engaged. And, if you have questions, I'll make sure your questions are answered. And of course, it also helps us to avoid all of the trolls and jihadis who like to come in the chat and accuse me of being an Israeli bot. If I had $1 for every single time someone accused me of being an Israeli bot or Israeli shill, I would probably be a bazillionaire by now. So here we go. Here's the final video.
Gaza, Gaza, you will rise! The Israeli genocide of Gaza!
I bet you that this girl probably can't even point out Israel on a map. That's the other thing, globalize the student intifada. Everyone from the Middle East, we know what intifada means. Intifada basically means blowing people up in the name of Allah and Islam. Intifada is basically jihad. And yet this is how deep the indoctrination has gone when it comes to young people in American and Western universities is they actually have been brainwashed into thinking that intifada means resistance. Meanwhile, intifada actually means terrorism. And so these young students are going around basically like advocating for the bad guys here. Like that's how deep the indoctrination is going, right? Like this is basically a call for Islamic jihad.
Qatar, a pint-sized Gulf state with outsized ambitions, is quietly reshaping the West's cultural and intellectual landscape. Through hefty donations to universities, funding of NGOs, and strategic investments in sports, it's pushing an Islamist agenda laced with anti-Semitism and pro-Hamas undertones. This isn't just influence peddling. It's a calculated campaign to radicalize minds and polish Qatar's image, and it's flying under the radar.
And as we just heard from the previous video, this has been going on for 40 years. And so what you're seeing today, so this video is from 7 months ago. So what you're seeing today in 2024, 2025, this is the end result of about 40 years worth of indoctrination and, creeping this ideology and slowly making it, more prevalent and more acceptable in Western doctrine.
The US and Europe should be sounding alarms, but they're barely paying attention. Let's start with academia. Qatar has pumped over $6 billion into American universities in the past decade, making it the largest foreign donor to US higher education. Elite schools like Harvard, Georgetown, and Northwestern have cashed these checks, setting up satellite campuses in Doha and cozying up to the Qatar Foundation, a state-backed outfit. What's the catch? These funds come with strings, subtle but real. Curricula get tweaked to downplay Qatar's human rights abuses and amplify anti-Israel narratives. At Georgetown's Qatar campus, for instance, programs have been criticized for promoting Muslim Brotherhood talking points, the ideological wellspring of Hamas. Professors like Khalid Al-Hrub at Northwestern's Doha branch have openly glorified Hamas on Al Jazeera, calling it a beacon of resilience. This isn't education, it's indoctrination dressed up as scholarship. The result? Campuses erupting with Free Palestine chants post October 7th, 2023, often veering into harassment of Jewish students. Europe's no better off. The Qatar Foundation International, or QFI, supports Arabic language programs in schools, which critics argue serve as a Trojan horse for introducing pro-Islamist perspectives. Qatar's cash flows into institutions like Oxford, where the Al-Qaradawi Center, named after a Muslim Brotherhood cleric who praised Hitler, pushes Islamist ideology under the guise of research.
Did I catch that right? They have an institute that's named after a Muslim Brotherhood founder who praised Hitler. I mean, then again, when you go to Gaza, you see the Gazans, they have stores in Gaza named Hitler and Hitler too. So, I mean, I'm not really surprised. These people are basically like the modern day Nazis.
Center, named after a Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay, let's go back here.
Center serve as a Trojan horse for introducing pro-Islamist perspectives. Qatar's cash flows into institutions like Oxford, where the Al-Qaradawi Center, named after a Muslim Brotherhood cleric who praised Hitler, pushes Islamist ideology under the guise of research.
That's in Oxford? Are you kidding me? I need to look this up. I cannot believe. I cannot believe that's the case. It's crazy.
A 2022 report by the Network Contagion Research Institute found that universities receiving Qatari funds see a 250% spike in anti-Semitic incidents compared to those that don't. It's not random. Qatar's money fuels groups like Students for Justice in Palestine, which cheer Hamas's attacks as resistance and intimidate Jewish students into silence. Jewish students report feeling unsafe on campuses, with harassment spiking at Qatari-funded schools. Al Jazeera, Qatar's state-funded media giant, further shapes public opinion, often framing Hamas as a resistance movement while downplaying its terrorist designation.
I told you guys. This is how they've convinced young people, right? Like they tell young people that intifada is, just a struggle, right? And like jihad is just like struggle. Meanwhile, intifada and jihad, basically mean Islamic terrorism. Um, and yet the indoctrination from Qatar, the Muslim Brotherhood, and these Islamist organizations has been going on for so long that they've been able to um, successfully indoctrinate these young people who know nothing about the Middle East. And all of a sudden, these young people are now on the side of Islamic terrorists. Meanwhile, the rest of us from the Middle East are like, what is going on right now? Right. But this is how Qatar and all these Islamist organizations have been infiltrating and indoctrinating the minds of young people. So this is where the $6 billion is going, guys. This is the over $6 billion has been going towards.
By the US and European Union. NGOs are another front. Qatar funnels millions through organizations like the Qatar Foundation International, which sneaks pro-Islamist content into US K-12 schools under the pretext of Arabic language programs. In Europe, NGOs tied to Doha spread anti-Western narratives, often cloaked in human rights rhetoric. NGOs, flush with cash, organize protests that blur the line between activism and
I want to go back to the language program here, because for those of you who've been watching the live stream from the beginning, if you remember this video here, which I showed earlier, what American universities don't want you to know about their funding, they exposed how China was doing the same thing through China, like through their they would fund Chinese language programs in American universities, and that would sort of be a Trojan horse to introduce like communist ideology and start to indoctrinate people into like the communist belief. Qatar is doing the exact same thing, right? So where is it? Here we go. Qatar is doing the exact same thing. So it seems to be a pattern with these bad actors when they're trying to influence young American minds. Is one of the sort of Trojan horses they use is fully funded language curriculums, right? Like language classes, which they then use to push their own anti-American, anti-Western ideology.
Which sneaks pro-Islamist content into US K-12 schools under the pretext of Arabic language programs.
Wow.
In Europe, NGOs tied to Doha spread anti-Western narratives, often cloaked in human rights rhetoric. NGOs, flush with cash, organize protests that blur the line between activism and hate speech. The Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, ISGAP, flagged these groups for promoting anti-democratic and anti-Semitic ideologies with Qatari backing. They're not just shaping minds, they're grooming future leaders to see Israel as the ultimate villain and Hamas as freedom fighters. Then there's sports, Qatar's shiny PR machine. Hosting the 2022 World Cup was a masterclass in image laundering. While the world marveled at Doha's stadiums.
See, so let's go back here. This, you see that flag right there?
Stadiums.
Oops. So that's the flag of the terrorist Islamic Republic that's currently occupying Iran. The flag you see above me, that's the real flag of Iran. That's the pre-1979 flag. So this is the flag of the occupiers, the Islamist occupiers. And I mentioned this earlier. One of the things that Qatar did during the FIFA World Cup is any Iranian who came with this flag, it didn't matter what their citizenship was. The vast majority of them were living outside of Iran. Anyone who was caught with this flag, the Qatari police would hand them over to Islamic regime officials who were in Qatar. So it was a very dangerous time for Iranians. Qatar is a big ally of the Islamic Republic, which is occupying my country of Iran.
Few question the $1 trillion war chest Qatar uses to buy influence. It's now eyeing stakes in Western sports franchises, like a rumored 5% bid for the NHL's Washington Capitals. These moves aren't just about profit. They're soft power plays to normalize Qatar's brand, while its state-run Al Jazeera churns out anti-Israel propaganda globally. The message? Qatar's a modern, friendly player, not a hub for Hamas leaders living in Doha penthouses. Why should this worry the US and Europe? Qatar's creeping influence radicalizes youth, erodes free speech, and mainstreams anti-Semitism, all without firing a shot. Its playbook thrives on Western complacency, exploiting open societies to spread closed-minded ideologies. If unchecked, this silent takeover will reshape public discourse for generations. It's time to wake up, scrutinize foreign funding, and call out Qatar's game for what it is, a Trojan horse wrapped in dollars and soccer balls.
So that was a very good way, I think, to end today's live stream. So thank you everyone for joining. If you didn't watch from the beginning, I encourage you all to go back and watch. This is Qatar 101 Part 2, where I was focusing more on how Qatar has been influencing young minds in the West and how they are contributing to the destabilization of Western civilization. And Qatar is certainly not your ally. It's not anyone's ally. Qatar is the second biggest sponsor of Islamic terrorism. Of course, the Islamic Republic, occupying my birth country of Iran, is the biggest sponsor of Islamic terrorism. Qatar is number 2. Thank you everyone for joining. If you enjoyed this live stream, make sure you like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see you all later tonight. We're gonna watch a documentary about Iran, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you all again. I just want to say it's really great to be back. I've been gone for a couple of weeks, but I'm just happy to see you all. And of course, a big thank you to the mods for being here and joining as well. All right, guys, see you all later tonight. And as always, Payande Iran, Javid Shah.